Hello and welcome everyone to the return of Season 2 of Sights on Sinnoh. This is episode 33 of the podcast as we jump into the second part of Diamond and Pearl. Battle Dimension is the name of this new season. And joining us today, I have two guests with me, two awesome co-hosts returning from the first one, Greg and Carina. How are you guys doing this week?
Hello, I am doing well. The air quality here is terrible.
Oh no.
So I'm sealed inside my house to avoid the smoke.
You guys have fires?
So the Canadian wildfires
Of course, blaming Carina.
Yeah,
well, she's
it
here.
is. Canada is sending all of its smoke to us, and it's very bad, and it's very hard to breathe.
To be fair, we still have a lot of the smoke.
Yeah.
It's been smoky for about 3 weeks now. I have given up on staying inside because there's not that much to do. So I am going back outside for like pogo walks and just accepting that my lungs will die because smoke. But yeah, it's very smoky.
It's very bad.
Jeez. Okay, this is ironic because I'm over here in California where everything's on fire always.
Well,
that's all right. Well, we did have like
climate change.
Exactly. We did have a sewage spill, so there's that smell, but not as much in terms of air quality. That's bad. But I'm glad you guys are hunkering down away from the flames as we are jumping here into episode 1 titled Tears for Fears. And the blurb for that reads, as our heroes head towards Veilstone City, Ash's new Chimchar struggles to adapt to its new surroundings. Everything is the complete opposite of life with Paul. Mealtimes are fun, and everyone treats each other with friendship and kindness. Chimchar still has vivid memories of the lonely and harsh treatment it received from Paul. So this sudden reversal of fortune is nearly too much for it to take. So starting off this episode, we again have the return of the cold opens with right, the lovely cold opens of a lot of battles going on, Zango's jumping from trees. What do you guys think about this one in particular?
The cold open made no sense. Like, they pick the weirdest, they pick the strangest moments to be their cold open every time.
Agreed. Yeah, I feel like this was just them picking like the most action-packed battle-y thingy, but also I was like, oh, here we go again. Yay.
And that totally stood out to me. I was like, these are all the high adrenaline moments of this episode, just kind of like cherry picked into this one part. And like, just do one. Like, don't do three. It just becomes more confusing for no reason.
I also want to have a conversation.
Yes.
With whoever is naming these episodes.
Okay, I actually did not know the reference here.
Tell them to stop.
I think you're like 14 years late on that, but go on.
Like, Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is the one before this, the end of the episode, which is a Nirvana reference. Tears for Fears is a band from the 80s. The episode after this, Once They Were Greenfields, is also based off of a song. And these are things that none of them would have ever heard. Like, Once They Were Greenfields was like the 1960s. Like, who is naming this? Just keep with what the Japanese called them. It makes sense. Also, given what happens in the episode, I feel like Tears for Fears is a really insulting title.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in general with the song title, episode titles. A lot of them are a bit of a stretch, although, I mean, like, I probably more than most people enjoy a good pun, but a lot of these are much even for me. But yeah, I feel like a lot of this episode was like Chimchar dealing with his like PTSD and like trauma that he faced at the hands of Paul, and like coming to grips with that and like starting to heal, and they kind of like made a flippant title out of it, which maybe not so cool.
It's not cool. But we have a new theme song.
We do. The rap is gone.
I'm so happy.
I made a note of that as well.
the era of the bad rap is over. We have moved into, we don't know why they call it Battle Dimension, but whatever.
So you guys enjoy this much more than the last one,
It
sounds like.
is not a good song, but it is a much better song.
I'm pretty sure it's also a much shorter song.
Shorter
it?
is better.
I don't know.
Well,
it
it
feels
feels
slower.
shorter.
Yeah. It goes a little slower, so that might be it for me. But I mean, Sinnoh doesn't have the strongest openings, but I feel like this one and the next one are the top contenders for me. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying this one at least compared to the first one, which is
I mean, enjoy
out
is a
there.
relative term.
Much like Chimchar, I'm having to deal with my emotional trauma of the rap theme and getting used to this new world that's presented to me.
Yeah.
Well, we are here for you on your path to healing, Greg.
We'll cheer you along, pat your head gently as Ash does in this episode, and comfort you as you continue forward. But speaking of Chimchar, I love the POV that we get here for this fire monkey because like it just starts and he's like looking around. Well, actually, before we even get there, Ash complains to Brock about why lunch isn't ready, and Brock just snaps at him, saying, "Well, if you had helped."
Like, seriously, make it yourself if you're so impatient.
Right. And Don even's like, he has a point. And I'm like, wait, why? Okay, Ash has been traveling with Brock for multiple regions at this point, and he isn't like, he doesn't know the drill by now, but Don does.
Look,
That part's a little weird to me.
Every season is an Ash amnesia opener.
Yes, he does bring Apom over, though, and he seems to remember
but
all
we're
that.
lucky that he remembers Apom, because he clearly has his memory wiped every start of every season. And it takes him a good 2 or 3 seasons to remember who he is and what he does and his whole deal.
Maybe. I'll say, to me, that trend feels like it started after Sinnoh. Like, starting in Black and White is really when they're like, how do I catch a Pokemon? And going forward. So maybe it's a little softer, at least here in comparison, in terms of his memory wiping. But
Correct.
This does inspire Ash to bring out his Pokemon along with everyone else. And to the moment that I was talking about earlier, which is Chimchar just looking and seeing how everyone's working together to like bring up the plates, set out the picnic blanket, and just like work together in a very family style environment of like getting ready to eat. And I just love this like processing that you could see Chimchar doing as he's like kind of confused, but also like not afraid, which is a good thing. And from here, this is where like when the food gets set out and everyone starts eating, he has one of the first of many flashbacks to how Paul used to feed him, which was very much like, here's your food, eat it, hurry. And that's pretty much all of the delicacy that Paul would give him with mealtime. And this is pretty much the theme for the rest of this episode is Chimchar comparing his current life to how it was with Paul and seeing the contrast between those. So what are you guys' thoughts on this first little flashback here?
I mean, they're just it's leaning into how terrible Paul is, right? Like it's not bad enough that they had to underline it 5 times at the end of the last season, but now they're gonna be like, he couldn't even feed Chimchar properly. Like it's a tin can in the middle of nowhere and like dropped at his feet. It's just like, why? Just stop. Like, stop making Paul even worse. Like, just I don't know what the point is to keep showing that he is like the most horrific trainer and nobody has stopped him.
Yeah, kind of on like a related thread. I feel like they're really beating us over with the head with the fact that it was a Zangoose that chased Chimchar that first time.
Yes.
Because like at the end of last season they had the Zangoose and Chimchar froze, and now they're like bringing back more Zangoose to like really drive it home that Chimchar had a traumatic experience with a Zangoose. And I'm like, okay, we get it. That's fine. I feel like we could like extend some creative liberties and have another scary Pokemon. And it would like have the same effect without just, scary Zangoose every time I want to bring back Chimchar's past.
So you think it's a little too on the nose that they choose Zangoose for this?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is probably because like it's a kids show and they want to make it very clear
Right.
like what they're trying to harken back
Right.
to. But I'm a bit tired of it by now.
I
Got
also just sort of be like, okay, it's a kid show, so we are not going to get a deep, in-depth view of how he needs to deal with his obvious trauma, other than the fact that they just keep forcing Chimchar to constantly face his trauma. It's just wild, and I get it. Like they kind of want to move on. Get Chimchar into a place where Chimchar isn't constantly experiencing trauma, but it feels really, 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 really rushed, and they keep taking these moments to show, no, you don't understand how bad it was. He had to eat out of a tin can, and then Paul fired rocks at him for like 4 hours and screamed at him like, okay, like have an ounce of sympathy for your audience. Have an ounce of sympathy for Chimchar. It was also like a weird. It was also felt like you're doing a weird clip show, but like instead of picking the best clips, you're like, let's pick all the trauma clips and watch them again. Why?
I think one good reason for it was so that we could get the shot of Paul really enunciating his pathetic and worthless.
Oh boy.
So just before we jump to that section, the way that Zangoose gets involved in this episode is through Team Rocket, actually. Because as they're all enjoying their lunchtime together, much like our heroes are, the Viper gets a glare in its eyes as it senses that the Zangoose are in the forest. And it's time for these mortal enemies to fight, because if you don't know, Zangoose and Viper always must fight each other. It is part of nature, their instincts, and you can actually see this in the games in horde battles, where multiple Pokemon appear at once in the wild, and if there's Zangoose and Viper, they won't attack you, they'll attack each other, which I thought it was a cool detail there. And here, Viper starts fighting with this group of 3 Zangoose, and Team Rocket tries to get away. Jesse tries a few times to get Viper back in the ball, but it still keeps coming out and fighting until they're blasted off, except for Meowth, who kind of has like a half a blast off, basically. And it's like, oh, well, okay, Meowth is going to do something this episode, apparently. So that's not super like elaborated on like why they separated it like this, but it'll just kind of play out later. But what do you guys think about this little segment with Team Rocket and the Zangoose?
Yeah, I feel like this is just another case of like we just need to shove Rocket in here. Like 2 minutes into the first episode of the first season, we already get our first Rocket blast off, and like they do it to themselves. Like why are they here? I know, but like so I feel like the main I don't know, maybe some like comic relief before getting into all of this trauma / we just need to have them in as many episodes as possible. But Rocket didn't really do anything here, and they even managed to blast themselves off into space at the start of the episode.
I also feel like they had to, like they felt like they had to justify why the Zangoose would appear later. So for no reason they appear now. It's like introducing them at this point for a pointless battle, which the Zangoose Viper battle was so cheaply done because it's the same 4 frames over and over, and they kept going back to it. I'm like, man, this is cheap.
Yeah, thinking that too, watching that battle, I was like, this looks like not very much money went into this episode.
But like it feels very cheap. And especially when they make it so noticeable.
Yeah, I think my theory is for the animation throughout most of Diamond and Pearl is that they save their budget for the contests because those typically have the most 3D work put into them. But I don't know why it's so heavy on that side versus like the rest of the season because
Yeah.
contests are great, but they don't happen that often to kind of balance it out this way. But going back to our heroes after Team Rocket gets separated and blasts off, we get a little sparring between Pikachu and Weasel, which Chimchar watches and brings back another flashback of how he was trained versus how his current team and trainers are training. And it's actually him beating Elekid and then being super happy about it until Paul kind of shuts him down.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of the hesitation that he has as he heads into the match that Ash wants to have between him and Piplup. And Karina, did you want to talk a little bit about this battle here with your boy Piplup?
Yeah, my boy Piplup, who clearly has a big advantage in this fight.
Yes.
But Chimchar opens with a dig, and Piplup is like looking around wildly and naturally does not see Chimchar coming and like gets hit with a dig. And then I think a few other things happen, and then they get into this like this little cat fight, which I thought was kind of hilarious. Where Chimchar's using Scratch and Piplup is using Peck, and then they like keep going. And I was honestly surprised that they didn't run out of PP for Scratch and Peck because they went back and forth for like a solid minute just doing this cat fight.
And they kept using the same animation cells.
I will say I enjoyed it in this context. I thought it was cute.
And this actually attracts the attention of all the other Pokemon that are sparring. They're like, "Oh, this is interesting." And they come over to watch, which I thought was funny. And even Meowth like pokes its head out from the bushes to see what's going on here. But I was like, "Oh, this is kind of a fun thing." Though I do wish they had made the animations a bit more unique, as Greg was saying. This leads to the last dig that Chimchar does on Piplup, which throws Piplup up in the air, only for Dawn to have Piplup use Bubble Beam and Chimchar to counter it with Flamethrower. But as you probably could have guessed, water beats fire in this case, and eventually it just pushes back through the flames and knocks Chimchar back for Brock to end the battle by saying that's it and calling the battle there. And this is probably the like emotional peak here for this episode as we get the callback to what we saw last season with Chimchar being released after hearing again from Paul, "That's it," in a very different context.
Yes,
which is
literally in the subtitles they have Chimchar emotional.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Chimchar is emotional.
And Ash picks him up as like Chimchar is already thinking like, "Oh, I'm gonna get released." Like that's my take from that. Did you guys have anything different?
I mean, it was hard to say. Like, it was definitely like some punishment is coming, right? Like, it's Chimchar clearly like, well, this is it. I'm gonna get left in the dark or forced to sleep in snow or whatever insane thing they decided to have Paul do next.
But instead, we get a bunch of just positive reinforcement from everyone, including Piplup and Dawn, and everyone just talking about how strong he was. A cut to all the Pokemon just cutely cheering as they super enjoyed the battle. And this brings Chimchar to a kind of almost emotional breakdown here as he starts just bawling in Ash's arms as he like kind of releases all his emotions that he's been holding up. And I thought this was a pretty cool moment for Chimchar.
Yeah, it was nice to see Chimchar get some love, and also just the shot of Piplup in Dawn's arms cheering on Chimchar. That was a good shot.
Yeah, definitely. I do know that in this season is where we actually see Piplup walk around and join our heroes much like Pikachu does. Because until this point, Piplup's always been in its Pokeball, so I'll look forward to that episode and see if I can pinpoint when that happens exactly. But as Ash is comforting him, we then cut to nighttime, and everyone's just outside their Pokeballs, I guess, like everyone like underneath the stars. And Chimchar is having the nightmare that Greg was talking about earlier, as Paul is training with Chimchar and Graveler, who is just like rock sliding consistently down the
just
cliff.
like pelting him.
Yeah.
And then Paul is like, "Don't dodge. You need
Yeah.
to like learn how to do this under pressure." And then
Right.
Paul needs to explain Chimchar's ability to him, which is like,
Mhm.
I feel like some form of abusive mansplaining, but there for the benefit of the audience. And Paul's like telling Chimchar to activate your blaze under pressure, and Chimchar can't, and it is a nightmare, and it is sad and scary.
Yes, he tells him that he has to do it like that day with the Zangoose, and this then shifts the nightmare to be about the Zangoose, where he wakes up as a slash kind of comes right for its face, and Chimchar is woken up by this, but relieved that's not real, and then decides to go for a walk, where he finds Meowth of all Pokemon walking around. Chimchar immediately like goes on the defensive, and is like thinking that he has to battle Chimchar, and Meowth just kind of tells him to like, "Hey, it's chill out. We're not gonna do this episode. Don't worry."
I mean, as cheap of a plot point it was, like they had to have Meowth get lost so that you had somebody who could actually talk to Chimchar.
Right.
Like, and I don't hate that,
Mm-hmm.
but like it still feels ham-fisted at the beginning to get to this moment. But like this is the one sort of redeeming section of this episode, is like Meowth clearly aware of how actually good the quote-unquote twerps are. And like you've always had sort of all this throughout the whole thing, like Meowth has been aware of both sides being like a joke, and Meowth sort of just really knows what's going on, and Meowth actually has a fairly deep character in the fact that Meowth cares about a lot of things and takes care of stuff. And so this moment of Meowth being able to actually put things into perspective was a very nice moment. And they almost undo it.
Yes.
But they don't. Luckily, like they don't completely destroy this moment. But it is nice to that you had a character that can understand Chimchar be able to respond in an appropriate and actually somewhat healing way.
Yeah, I also I liked the nice Meowth moment, and it is cute how he like pats the stump next to him and is like, "All right, take a seat, buddy. We're gonna have a talk." And there is a moment at like the battle at the end of the episode where Meowth is like, "I'm a Pokemon too," and it kind of I don't know. I don't know if it was supposed to be kind of like a link between those, but I saw it kind of as like Meowth is like a Pokemon too, and can like talk to Chimchar Pokemon to Pokemon, you know, which is maybe what Chimchar needs, and I kind of felt that in this scene.
Yeah, I like that. I get why they did it, but it maybe would have been stronger if like it hadn't directly been Meowth who has tried to kidnap Chimchar a lot. Like I kind of liked how Meowth was commenting during the battle a bit, but maybe it could have been better if it was like a talk between Chimchar and Pikachu, or Chimchar and Piplup, and Meowth kind of like spying and translating for Team Rocket, just so we get like a bit more of a relationship between Chimchar and its new family versus Chimchar and this like somewhat antagonist that's already known to him at this point. But
I don't know. I feel like it could almost be like more powerful coming from supposed enemy. You know, because if it's from your friend, you're like, oh, you're just like trying to make me feel better and like be nice. But if it's from like this Meowth who has tried to kidnap you and is like real talk, you're like you'll be okay, then you know it might have more of an impact.
That's fair. Yeah, definitely can be more impactful when it's someone who like you're supposed to fight and not someone who's supposed to like agree and support you there. And the next day, as everyone's packing up and getting ready to leave, Chimchar still trying to find its place in the chores, which I'm like, Chimchar, no, escape, just lean out a little bit. You can avoid this. But then Ash scouts him out to go fetch water with him, and it runs off. It runs off with a jug of like the empty jug on its head behind Ash as they go to like the river or something and get water, which I thought was funny. And in the meantime, Team Rocket is flying overhead looking for Meowth, and then uses what's basically a plunger to like grab Meowth.
That was good. They plunged Meowth's bum to carry him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to do it, even though they've had like a robotic hand in like multiple episodes.
Yeah, I don't know why they haven't pulled out the plunger on Pikachu yet. Like, really?
I mean, they plungered Pikachu. I mean, they've done every medieval torture device to Pikachu. Like, what haven't they done? Give it time. Well, I mean, they can't use a mace because that could actually do damage.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. No. They fired a rocket at Pikachu and Electrike. Like, I thought it was a net rocket. No, it was a literal rocket. And I was like, what the heck are they doing? From their submarine. But
yeah,
that whole episode is a thing. So here, now that Meowth's on board, they have someone that can use their controller, is basically what I think it comes down to. Meowth is like the engineer of this team.
I mean, the brains are back. So
yeah, exactly. Right. And they then go with a new plan to capture all these Pokemon as they're cleaning up, and basically have these like cylinder tubes that fire nets and are able to just grab all the Pokemon in 2 goes and capture them up in the balloon, which seems like a high-tech thing for them to do again after using the plunger, but maybe that's where they're putting their money towards. And they go through their motto. Dawn actually has like a 500 IQ idea here and tries to use the Pokeball to return, but the glass apparently interferes with that. But then that makes me question, like, every time that they've used a net, why don't they just use the Pokeball to recall the Pokemon back?
There's a lot of questions. How does this energy work? If it's see-through, energy can get through the glass. So what is the beam? What is the recall? Like it brings in a lot of questions about how Pokeball works that they should never try to answer because it does not make sense.
My assumption is that because it's the way it's shaped, it just distorts the light, so it can't actually go straight through. But maybe that's just my headcanon.
Sure.
And then here, as Team Rocket successfully tries to fly away, Zangoose leap up from the trees as the Viper comes out of its Pokeball and knock out the hot air balloon, and then corners them on a cliff that I think is basically the same cliff that Meowth and Chimchar were at last night. And then they jump into the tubes, all of Team Rocket, as they try to hide themselves or protect themselves from this pack of Zangoose, which eventually leads to a headbutt competition between the Zangoose and the Viper. And unfortunately, we have Piplup, Pikachu, and a few other Pokemon trapped in this cylinder as well, as they're about to get headbutted off the cliff. And then Ash comes in with the water and Chimchar and is like, oh, this is bad. What do you guys think about this like setup for the end of the episode here?
Honestly, for me, I know this is supposed to be like the climax of the episode where we get like this big battle, but this is kind of where I stopped paying attention. I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Rocket is back. Something's going to happen, but it'll be okay.
I mean, why the Pokemon inside were just like, okay, we'll just sit in here with these losers and not do anything but look angry. Also, these tubes are suddenly much larger because they can now fit 4 other people.
Yeah, I like see what they're trying to do here in terms of stakes, where like it's only Chimchar who can save them, but they just like Team Rocket just jumped in these tubes, so you guys could theoretically jump out, right?
Jump out and like do something.
Like,
apparently
mhm.
it locks from the outside and they can't get out because that's a thing. It's just it's plot convenience, and I had to after this I was like, I have to remember that this is a kids episode, especially since like Chimchar will get over the trauma in approximately 5 seconds after being talked to. One little pep talk, and he's like, "Yep, I can fight these things that nearly killed me."
He gets the pep talk, and we go through a bunch of flashbacks of this episode, mostly as we kind of see Chimchar really establishing his, or like mentally at least, establishing himself as part of this family that he's now a part of. And Ash then throws in more inspiration and tells him to jump in using Flamethrower, which the Zangoose dodge. And then as they start battling, a Zangoose goes in for what looks like a slash on Chimchar, and Chimchar actually gets a little frozen up here. So Ash jumps in actually and blocks it, which leaves a like tear in his clothing here on the shoulder. Were you guys expecting this from
clearly
Ash?
Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, because he does it all the time to Pikachu, but like he is clearly very hurt. Which I don't know if that raises or lowers the stakes that he is like, oh, I'll just take this, and we just fight with Pokemon for reasons. It's fine. I mean, I know what they were going for, right? Like they were showing Chimchar that Ash is indeed very different. I mean, and Ash has the good line of, we're not going to worry about Blaze because we can do things without it. Like that moment is really good. But like just the like only you can save them is also really bad. Like clearly you can go throw yourselves in front of the Zangoose and only get minorly hurt. So you could probably have run over there and opened the things. Like it's just a weird juxtaposition that they're going for. But then I had to go, oh, it's a kid's show. And I'm thinking too much about it.
Yeah, I feel like this was really good, but this was really bad is kind of a theme of this episode. Kind of what I came away with, because there are a lot of moments where I was like, oh, that's like really nice. And there are a lot of moments where I was like, wow, that was really unnecessary. But yeah, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit.
Closing off what happens here, Chimchar is able to beat the Zangoose in what to me felt like a bit of a short battle, given like all the stakes that we're going through here. Team Rocket proves that you can open the thing from inside as they try to sneak out in a way. And then everyone attacks Team Rocket, sending him blasting off. And Ash congratulates Chimchar for a job well done. And everyone else starts cheering him on, which leads to Chimchar happily celebrating the way that he did in the flashback against Elekid before being shut down by Paul. So, nice little detail there that I liked. As we close off that episode, Tears for Fears. And Carina, since you were jumping on this a bit already, what would your review be for this episode, and any final thoughts?
I'd probably give this episode a 5, just because like it was okay. Like there are some good moments, there were some bad moments. For me, it kind of like balanced out. I don't think it was a particularly strong season opener. Maybe I feel like we maybe like picked up where we left off the last season like a little bit too much, and it didn't really feel like a fresh start to me, which I maybe would have liked, but I don't know, maybe that's just the way that Pokemon seasons go. I've never watched the first episode of a season right after the last episode of the previous season, so I don't know.
Yeah, just to answer that question, at least if it's in the same region, typically it's not like it's very like arbitrary where they put the season ending.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes there'll be like a climactic battle at the last one, and that's how you know. But in terms of premiere, I feel like most of them is pretty just up to what the schedule is for the animators. Greg, what are your thoughts and rating?
I feel like I'm gonna give this one a 6. Because they tried to do There's a couple of things that they tried to do really well. Like they did the meow thing really well. They did a couple of things really well. I just feel that overall, I felt like they were really rushing to be like, okay, and now Chimchar is better. And I know, kind of remembering how the rest of the things go, like it is a continuing plot point, but I felt like they were really trying to rush Chimchar's healing in this. And like that felt weird. It felt like the way that they ended with him being like, oh, I can now fight the wild Zangoose, and being completely seemingly fine at the end just felt super, let's just get to this point so that Chimchar can be part of the team. And I felt that sort of did a little bit of a disservice to what they could have done with the story, but also I would say, but they have a short season, knowing full well there's like 50 more episodes to come, and I don't know why they felt the need to rush.
Yeah, I do think it's a little odd looking at this in the larger scope of the season, because we still hit on Chimchar's character and how he develops. And this episode made it seem like we weren't. Like it was like, this is all done now. Like you can move on, carry on with your lives. But it actually doesn't. So it was a weird tone looking at it in that context. I was gonna give this an 8 because I think this is really just a nice episode for Chimchar overall. But looking at some of the things that you guys said in terms of the beats and some of the things that were just not executed as strongly as I think they could have been, I think I'll rate this episode a 7 out of 10 after that.
Ooh, peer pressure.
Well, it made me realize some things, and like I really liked how the flashbacks were, because it wasn't giving me like more of the feeling that, oh, this is showing that Paul is like worse and worse. It's kind of just like, this is how Paul was. And now, like, this is Chimchar moving forward. But just some of the things like the animation quality and the setup to get to the stakes at the end, which if you start thinking about it in terms of, like, is it really just up to Chimchar, or are you kind of conveniently putting it out that way for the plot, took it down a point for me in the end.
Yeah, and going back to Greg's point about rushing the things. They need to leave space for like the 8 Bidoof filler episodes that are coming. Obviously.
Oh
man. Okay, I will say this. The season here seems like it has a lot less filler than we saw in the previous one. But I'll let you guys decide that at the end as we get through all of this here. But
we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. I'm very curious what your thoughts.
I started the episode 2 and
what? Okay.
we got some fillers.
I didn't
finish it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But this has been the next episode of Sights on Sinnoh, episode 33, as we jump into season 2 of this and the next season of Diamond and Pearl. Greg and Carina, thank you so much for coming by today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm excited to see where this goes. And if people want to find you on the interwebs, where's a good place to find you?
I am on Twitter and Discord mainly. I am Pingumon.
I am on Twitter, which is the easiest. I'm in way too many Discords. So just go to Twitter at White Wing.
Too many Discords. That should be a hashtag. But that is it for this week. As always, feel free to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below what your thoughts are on this season as we move forward. Why is this opening better than the last one? I want a full essay down there. And we will catch you next time for another episode of Sights on Sinnoh. So until then, see you in Sinnoh. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.